Hello everyone. I am Christin Grissom. I am the Vice President of Scholarship and Membership with Phi Theta Kappa. We are so glad to have you here with us today to chat related to the All-USA and Coca-Cola Academic Team Nominator information that you will need to select and recognize the top of the top from your community colleges from all across the country. So without further ado, I'm sure you guys are the experts when it comes to what we lovingly like to call Zoom University around here these days. So you're very familiar with the resources that are on Zoom, as well as the chat box and the question and answer section of this resource. But don't hesitate to, of course, ask questions as we go. We're going to be addressing every single one of your questions. And trust that no question is silly. More often than not, I feel that we probably already heard the questions, but I don't feel like you're asking something that we may not know the answer to. And if we don't know the answer, we will certainly get back with you on what that is. So keep the questions flowing as we go. And odds are that if you have a question, someone else probably has that very same question. So if you want to drop a quick line in the chat box just to let us know who you are, where you're from, I'm sure that your peers on the call would certainly love to see all the colleges as well as states represented all across the United States and abroad as well. So without further ado, I wanted to jump right in to make sure that we're having as much time as possible to address any questions that you have. I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce our team. I know so many of you work with our staff all throughout the year. Maybe you have or have not been able to put a face with the name of these incredible ladies that you see on this screen. And certainly I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Laurie Brown, that you'll see here as well. She's giving you a quick wave right now. And Laurie is the Director of Scholarships with us as well. So on the bottom left-hand corner is our newest member of the scholarship team. This is Sarah Reynolds. You may have worked with her before when it comes to supporting four-year college and university transfer scholarships. She has moved into the student side of the house with working to support scholarships with us from the internal scholarships that we administer, and also Christin Ware that is in the bottom right-hand corner. So we always get asked, are you all real people or do you have some bots that answer these questions? And the answer to that is no. And we, of course, answer all the questions that you have. And know that the advice and the input that you share with us is taken very seriously. We take the advice that you share with us to heart, and certainly in a way that we leverage that to make sure we are applying the feedback that you're getting on your college campuses and putting that in action, because these scholarships are representative of students all across the country. So we take your advice and your input very seriously. If you have questions or if you have advice or input on things you would like to see updated or changed, certainly please don't hesitate to share that with us as well. So what we're going to do today is just walk through, of course, an overview of the scholarships as well as the process updates as it relates to the nomination process. And like, I just want to throw this out there really quickly, 2020 has been a year of a lot of change, and we want to acknowledge that. So we try to keep everything as seamless and as change friendly as possible to make sure that it did not create a lot of issues for you, because we know that it's been a lot. This year's been a lot for people to bear. So we also wanted to share some application reminders, some details about awarding timelines, deadlines, things like that that apply to all of the students and all of you as nominators as well. And we would be remiss if we didn't say thank you first and foremost for what you do to support this program, and we could not be more grateful for what you do, many of you as advisors and certainly too as nominators. And without you, we wouldn't be seeing the top of the top students come through from all across the country to be considered for these awards. So what you're doing to inspire these students to really proactively seek change in their communities and on your college campus is something that's very special to us. So keep those nominations coming, and we'll talk through all the details for tips for these nominations. We have a lot of seasoned pros on the line, and we also have some newbies too. So to any of our seasoned pros when it comes to being a nominator, if you have advice along the way to share with other nominators who may be more new to this, certainly don't hesitate to hold back on that as well. We certainly would love to see that and hear it as well. We'll walk through what it looks like from the nominator portal and grid side, and then certainly showing what resources you have as nominators and saving some time for questions as well. So in terms of the process updates, we have done a lot to strengthen communications regarding this program. So we do a lot of work when it comes to promoting the scholarship to students, to advisors, to nominators, to regional coordinators, to officers all across the country. So we do this because we want to get the word out and get the exposure out. Oftentimes we find that on campuses, colleges will reach out to people they know directly, which is wonderful. But if there's a student that still is amazing, that may not be as engaged or involved in your chapter or on campus, for example, we want to make sure that we're giving access to and providing an opportunity for equity for all students that are Phi Theta Kappa members in specific. And as you know, the All-USA program is open to non-members as well. So your students who you're nominating do not have to be Phi Theta Kappa members. So when we're looking at the data for this, 98% of the students who end up getting nominated for the All-USA Academic Team Program are PTK members, but we do know there's still about 2% of students who are not members, and that's okay. So we just want to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for access and equity here for all students. We have made some modifications to the application itself to be more inclusive and supportive of students, particularly in the areas of explanation for what we're asking for on different areas. We provided new tooltips and new links to things so students had more information about what we're asking for. And in particular, we have had more students asking for clarification on certain things, like credit to quarter conversion. So we provided links, of course. And we have spent a lot of time over the summer, right, Laurie, with drafting a lot of articles in our support library to help support students along the way and hopefully to help alleviate some of the burden you may feel with getting peppered with all kinds of questions. So if you have a pen or a piece of paper, or maybe you're jotting notes down digitally, a helpful link to share with your students is support.ptk.org. This is a phenomenal resource for you to plug students in with ways. We have a ton of articles and support about how to write an essay, what we're looking for in the essay, what or how to ask for a letter of recommendation, things like that. Very commonly asked questions, and we know that your time is precious, so don't hesitate to share that link with students who are asking you these questions. We already have a ton of resources out there that may help support your students along the way as well. So in the judging process, of course, we're asking judges in different ways to avoid biases, to make sure that they are being equitable and providing equal opportunity for our students regardless of resource for these students. So know that if you're serving, for example, a chapter or college in a rural area, know that your students are getting equitable and the same level of treatment for consideration to receive these scholarships as, say, students who may come from a more densely populated area where there may be more access to resources. So we've improved a lot of what we do and how we do it to make sure that students are being considered and certainly are evaluated on equal playing fields. And so we are also, of course, awarding these scholarships. We have a very tight time frame here. We're trying to get the applications, of course, started and completed, but also judged and verified in a more quick fashion so we can announce that earlier. And why this is important is because mostly all state academic team programs, which you know may have earlier timelines or deadlines than things like AACC, where All-USA scholars are recognized, or PTK Catalyst, where they're recognized in April. So we know that there's a healthy chunk of all-state programs that recognize students in February and March, which makes it very challenging to get those student winners in your hands earlier, but we try our hardest to make sure we can make that happen. So application reminders, we want to remind everybody, we get asked this every single year, if we have an enrollment key. And an enrollment key does not exist. We did previously have an enrollment key that students had to have to access the application. This does not exist any longer. So students can apply for our scholarships at scholarships.ptk.org. And if they are affiliated with your college or your campus on the application, you will see them on your Nominator dashboard. A big thing that I want to note here is that if a student, if say for instance, you know that Jane Doe should be visible on your Nominator dashboard and you don't see Jane Doe, the quickest, easiest solution for this is to ask the student what campus they're affiliated with on their application. This is a self-select option that the students get to say, I'm from Jones County Junior College, or I'm from Miami-Dade, and pick the campus that they are attending. So if you are the nominator for that particular campus that they've selected, that's how they show up on your dashboard. If you don't see Jane Doe on your dashboard, more likely than not, it's because they've tied themselves to a different campus. So ask the student to check on their application what college and campus they have tied themselves to, so you can make sure that gets updated pretty quickly and easily. I would venture to say, is probably the number one most asked question in this whole nomination process, why they're not seeing a particular student on their application. So another thing that we really want to highlight is that the eligibility quiz is there for students, for them to be as honest and as transparent as possible, because we really have worked hard to make sure that the eligibility requirements match what the donor's expectations are. If the student is not being honest or transparent on that eligibility quiz, more often than not, we're going to find out that they actually lied on the eligibility quiz. And particularly, students will try to trick the eligibility quiz to make themselves eligible for things that they're really not eligible for. They usually change things around their credit hours or GPA. The way we find that out is because we have to evaluate transcripts. And so when we're looking at those transcripts, if we see that the requirement of the credits for the GPA has not been met, that's how we are finding that out. So we do actually very heavily recommend to students when we're working with them as well that they are being very transparent and honest on their application. The eligibility quiz will tell them if there is what areas are making them ineligible, and they may see, you know, my major is underwater basket weaving, for example. It's showing me I'm not eligible because of my major. Disregard that question when it shows why they're not eligible, because we have very few scholarships that are looking at major specific. So our application and the majority of our scholarships, 90% of our scholarships are for students with any major. So the predominant areas where they're getting stumped on the eligibility quiz are really regarding their credits, their GPA, and if they're enrolled at least part-time. So those are the areas where we find that students try to trick the eligibility quiz the most. A new change for us this year has been the letter of recommendation. This is a question that I think that you'll probably get a lot. We try to hedge off a lot of that with the students directly, but you will note that the letter of recommendation is not required this year. This is in response to everything that's happened with COVID. So we know that your plates as advisors and nominators are very full, and more often than not, you're not going to have a ton of time to write, 20 letters of recommendation for students. And in particular, those you may not have gotten to work as closely with. Though the letter of recommendation is not required, it is absolutely recommended. And we do recommend it to students, particularly for your role as as nominators, because when you're looking at the strength of an application, oftentimes it's very helpful to have that outside opinion from someone other than the student about the strength or the student's caliber as a leader. So we do recommend that if you are serving as the nominator, that you're working with your students too to let them know again that it's not required, but it is recommended. So we are asking for, again, this is not a change, but unofficial transcripts. This is something they can go and grab just a screenshot of their unofficial transcript to upload. And we will touch base with students again, just like we always have, again in January 2021 to get the updated transcript to prove that they've completed their fall coursework and to make sure that their GPAs haven't deviated to drop below 3.5 to be considered for these scholarships. So the citizenship document upload, this is still required as well, and this is in place because we have donors that have specific requirements. You may ask or you may receive questions from students that say, I'm not eligible for these scholarships because of my citizenship. That should not be true. And so the reason we're saying this is that the majority of the scholarships on these applications are for students regardless of what their citizenship is, including DACA students. So I just want you to be mindful and to be aware of that in case they say, I'm not eligible because of my citizenship. That is not true. So of the scholarships that are on our scholarship application, again, I would venture to say over 90% of these scholarships are open for students of no matter what their major, yes, but also their citizenship status as well. Again, if you have students that have questions about very specific things like the citizenship, about their transcripts, about credit quarter to credit conversions, things like that that can be more technical, know that we do have the support library of resources that are available for your students. And we'll share this link later on, but I'll just go ahead and tell you again, it's support.ptk.org. Again, that's support.ptk.org. And I think Laurie will probably post that in the chat for us too, if you want to link to that, so students can reference that very easily. The deadline structure, again, is December the 1st at 5 p.m. Central Time for students. We have staggered the deadline between the students and you as nominators for specific reasons, but mostly to give you time to work with your nominations. If you have subcommittees that really help you to identify who your college wants to support to be recognized for these scholarships, we stagger those deadlines to make sure you have the time to do that. So the nominator deadline is December the 4th at 5 p.m. Central Time there. And I will say that we do not know what COVID challenges will be presented to us this fall. But I want you to know we're going to be as flexible as we humanly can to accommodate you as nominators, and certainly working with our students to make sure they have access to these scholarships too. So with these deadlines stated in mind here, we are doing our best to adhere to these deadlines, but we do not know what COVID related challenges may exist that we are thrown unforeseen challenges in that regard as well. But I want to state too, just that the value or the importance of applying for these scholarships and to be considered for these scholarships is that there's access to more than $600,000 in scholarships that are included, that we'll be giving away through the fall scholarship process. When we're looking at the scholarships that are tied to nominations, you're talking close to $300,000 that are affiliated with direct access for these students to be considered for that portion of the money just by being nominated for these scholarships. So the work that you're doing is very important to make sure that students are being considered and certainly that they're getting the recognition that they rightfully deserve as well. And so I always like to, and I don't know if this is helpful to you, but if students start complaining to you that it takes a long time to apply for these scholarships or to be considered for them, just know one of the easiest ways for us to work on around that is to say that really if you took an hour of your time to really compete for something, if you got paid $833 for your work for an hour, would you do it? Show of hands for those of you who would do that. And so if you want to use the little the option here to raise your hand on the screen, that's always a fun way to see. I would raise my hand in 2.2 seconds if somebody said I could make $833 an hour for doing something. So this is a quick way for students to see it is worth your time to compete for these scholarships, because investing an hour of your time could yield you some big bucks there too. So just really quickly, the scholarship selection and awarding process, I just wanted to show you a quick look at the timeline that we're looking at here for the time frame for students to apply, as well as when you are to nominate students. Again, student deadline is December 1st at 5 p.m. and nominators deadlines is at December 4th at 5 p.m. So judging starts taking place in January, right when we come back from the holiday break. We hit the ground running as fast as we humanly can with judging, and we move forward into the selection and verification phase. And what that means is that judging is completed in the month of January. We start working on reaching out to advisors and to nominators for verification purposes. If there are any questions that we have about an application in February, scholars are notified in March, and then recognition events. So where All-USA scholars and New Century Transfer scholars are recognized and celebrated at the American Association of Community Colleges events, their convention in April 2021. This has already been stated that it will be a virtual event for AACC. So we will have a virtual component for the recognition for these scholars as well. So PTK Catalyst is in April 2021 as well, as is our ACCT, the Trustees Congress, that happens in October of 2021. So the ACCT Congress is where we recognize the All-USA, the Coca-Cola Academic Team Workforce Scholars. They are recognized at this event. So regardless if any of these events end up being virtual, again, related to the pandemic, know that we still will celebrate our students, whether that may look different virtual versus in person. It's yet to be seen on some of these recognition events, but know that the recognition will still exist regardless if we're facing pandemic challenges or not. So I'm going to turn it over to Laurie to talk through the application process for All-USA.
Yep. Thanks, Kristen. Happy to be here today. I'm happy to see all the faces here. Real quickly, your nomination for the All-USA program puts these students into contention for not only the All-USA program, but the Coca-Cola Academic Team program, the New Century Pathway program, which is for both your transfer students and your workforce or CTE students. And in 39 states, all-state academic teams. So these nominations are very valuable to these students. They can't compete in these programs without the nomination. Of course, they can't compete if they don't complete the application. So they're also considered without your nomination for additional scholarship opportunities if they're eligible. And we'll kind of get to that here in just on the next slide. But your nomination is critical and we'll watch and see who's got some room for additional nominations. You'll get the reminder emails from our team. We'll work with you to help these students get completed if we're having some completion issues. But certainly log into your nominator dashboard. We'll cover that in a minute, but you can kind of track their progress through the application cycle just to make sure that you do have some completed applications to submit for nomination in December. And if you could push me to the next slide, that'd be.
Yeah, I just want to say really quickly here too, just by virtue of nominating your students, that why this is so important is you get to nominate up to 4 students per college campus. And so you're nominating 2 workforce students and 2 transfer students for All-USA. And we do call it the umbrella program because you're essentially with one nomination, you're nominating students for 4 different scholarships. And this opportunity can well extend over the $300,000 that we were talking about earlier, because there are scholarships at the all-state level that come from different corporations in some states, different organizations in other states, and same for your colleges and universities. So it is absolutely worth it. We do have some resources available for you in your nominator dashboard as well to help recruit students. And why this part is so important is that, of course, while we're working to promote this scholarship nationally, we also do depend very heavily on you from the local level to make sure that you're working with your students from your college and your campus to send information, emails, or texts, anything that you may have in your LMS systems as well, to make sure that the word is getting out there, because we can only work with students if they know about it, right? And if they're applying. So it's absolutely worth it. And we really would appreciate your help if you would help us to reach out to your students and email your students at your college campus too, who have a 3.5 and above, really to make sure that they're aware of this opportunity that they can be considered for it. So there's templates, there's email templates that you can snag from your Nominator dashboard to help you with this and making sure that you can leverage some pre-existing language to help you promote these programs too.
And I will say real quickly, there's sometimes a lot of confusion between what a transfer student is and what a workforce student is. And typically we will tell a nominator or an advisor or a student, if this is their terminal degree, if they're going to earn their degree, whatever it is at your community college, and they're going directly to work, they're a workforce student, even if they're a business major or like a non-CTE major. So that's kind of what we're looking at. The students who are graduating or finishing their associate degree and taking a gap year before they start the 4-year school, those are transfer students. Students, for instance, an RN, a student who's gotten their ADN at your school and they're going to work as an RN while they bridge to BSN is still a transfer student, even though they're in the workforce. So your true workforce student is going to be not going back to school, not working while going to school, not taking a gap year, but going directly into the workforce. And if you guys have any questions, you can certainly contact our team and we'll kind of walk through what the picture of that student might look like for you at a nomination, from a nomination perspective.
Right. So, and we'll talk a little more about this in just a second, but the All-USA program focuses on the top 20 students in the nation. It does not matter what state they're from. Sometimes we do have a couple of students from the same state that end up selected for this scholarship. This is, again, the top scoring students from all across the country. The Coca-Cola Academic Team is the next highest scoring students that's broken down in gold, silver, and bronze. And those are 50 students on each of those 3 teams. And then we're looking at the New Century Scholar Pathway, or the New Century Pathway program, which is both transfer and workforce. And so just please note that this is where you're seeing the top scoring student from every state. So from all the states, plus students from our Canadian provinces, as well as internationally, are recognized here. So don't think that even though you may not have a student that is selected to the All-USA Academic Team, that it's not worth your time. It's absolutely worth your time as a nominator because there is the top scoring student from each state who are recognized as the New Century Transfer or the New Century Workforce Pathway Scholars. And we'll talk about some differences between those in just a minute as well. But more than that, when you nominate, you're automatically in most states getting your students placed on an all-state academic team. So each state's structure for recognition looks different. Some states have recognition for all students who are nominated. Some have different tiered structures. And whatever that may look like, we are improving the all-state dashboard. And Laurie, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link on that as well to point to the all-state dashboard. We're working on getting details about the team structures for each state, as well as details about the event, whether that's virtual or in person. We'll get that posted and updated very frequently as well. So we would definitely appreciate your nomination for students in each of these for All-USA. And we're really working hard to make sure diversity is there as well. So if you're looking at your dashboard for your nominations and you're seeing that you don't have some diversity there, this would be very much so appreciated if you could help us with reaching out to different groups on your college campus to help get some diversity included for different demographic profiles as well here, because we want to make sure that we are not leaving a stone unturned in terms of making sure that students of all kinds have access to scholarships and opportunities. Okay, Laurie, you ready to hit this one?
Sure. So right now we're in what we call a fall scholarship cycle. We've got some different types of scholarships. They're grouped here by how these students can use their funding. The unrestricted degree scholarships will include the All-USA program, as well as the TEK production scholarship for our graphic design, event production, video kind of majors. because these students are typically on the upper end of the credits and they're getting ready to finish up at your school. This is where the bachelor's degree scholarships live, especially the Geist-White and Heights programs, as well as a couple of smaller regional programs and the New Century Transfer Program. There are a couple of associate degree programs that are housed on the fall cycle, the workforce pathway, for example, as well as the Obendorf, which is going to help students face that unanticipated barrier to completion. COVID has presented a plethora of problems that students are dealing with, and we're seeing just tons and tons of students with different COVID-related problems and issues submitting applications for Obendorf. This is going to help them finish the associate degree program at your school, and also your pharmacy tech students. If you have a pharmacy tech program at your school, encourage your pharmacy tech students to apply. This will help them finish up that certification exam for sure. But all of these programs are going to be housed on this one application and have a December the 1st deadline. Students can be considered for all the programs listed under in bachelor's degrees and associate degrees. Pretty much without your nomination, how do I say that? Your nomination puts them in there for All-USA, New Century, and Coke, as well as All-State, but any other program you see on here does not require your nomination. And even without your action, they'll be considered. So don't fret about that. I speak to a nominator or two every year who says, I don't want to keep them from being considered, and we will absolutely consider them for everything they're eligible for outside that nomination-based program.
Absolutely, don't fret. And like Laurie was talking about, because the fear is that if you don't nominate students, they can't be considered for other scholarships, particularly for those transfer scholarships that can be higher dollar scholarships as well. So don't worry about that. Students can be considered regardless if they're nominated for the scholarships that you see here, especially in the bachelor's degree scholarship area as well. I did want to just mention too regarding nominations as well on the All-State side, and I know that's not listed here, but when you're nominating students for All-State programs, please know that you're getting them in consideration for very large, oftentimes very large scholarships, particularly in Arizona where there are full ride scholarships that exist. But please note that nominations do not imply that they will automatically be named to All-State Academic Team programs because there are stipulations that some states have in place that look at different factors for being considered for full ride scholarships. Arizona in specific is very sensitive to citizenship. So make sure that, when you're looking to nominate students, if there are any all-state limitations about citizenship that you're aware of for your particular state, that you're just keeping those things in mind. And it's always a great idea to connect with the all-state coordinator in your state for verification. And this is exactly why I think it's so important to connect with your all-state academic team program coordinator as well to see if there's any additional requirements that need to be kept in mind for that nomination. And we'll post that link to the all-state coordinators page as well, so we can all work in tandem to make sure you have any question you may have about the nomination covered as well.
Righty, so let's talk scholar dollars. As you can see on your screen, there's nearly $500,000 that we will be putting in the hands of students. And yes, every single scholarship program that we're going to administer from this application is going to be placed in the hands of your students. We are not sending the money to the schools. We want the students to be able to decide what they want to use these funds to pay for, whether they want to save it and use it next semester, or whether they want to buy textbooks with it, whether they want to pay their tuition, how they want to use these funds. So we're going to put nearly $500,000 in these students' hands. So you can kind of see on the screen the breakdown. We kind of would high level run over it. The All-USA program is the top 20 students in the nation. Those students will receive the $5,000 scholarship and be honored at the AACC recognition event. Coca-Cola students are paid according to their tier. The top 50 students are gold students. The next 50 are silver students, and the next 50 are bronze students. Each of those levels has, of course, a different scholarship amount associated with it. Your New Century Pathway scholars, your transfer students have $2,250 coming to them, along with their recognition at the AACC event. And workforce students will receive $1,250 and the recognition at the ACCT Congress. All of these students, All-USA, Coca-Cola, and New Century, also receive medallions and certificates in recognition of their achievement. One student from Canada and one student from a college in one of our sovereign nations will also be recognized as a New Century scholar. And they will receive the same funding that the continental United States scholars receive. And then in your all-state teams, these 39 different states, there's more than $41 million in scholarships in play throughout the 39 different states. So again, the nomination is critical. The students can't compete in these all-state programs without the nomination. They certainly can't compete for the top 20 slots in All-USA or the recognition in New Century or Coca-Cola programs. But there's a lot of scholar dollars at stake here, and we know how expensive college is, and we know that every single college student anywhere always needs scholar dollars, always. So nominate today, or by the December 4th deadline anyway.
So I want to jump into the nitty gritty of the eligibility requirements. This is always a big question that students have, that nominators have. So of course you want to know what your students have to do to be considered for these scholarships. And I want you to make sure that if you have questions we're not covering here on the eligibility requirements, that you're asking those in the QA section or in the chat, and we'll be glad to address those. Students always ask how many credit hours. This is probably one of the biggest areas that students get stumbled upon when it comes to considering are they eligible or not. And let me just share a quick reminder. The eligibility quiz will always tell students which scholarships they're eligible for, as well as any rationale or reason as to why they're not eligible if they're not eligible for scholarships. So it's going to highlight in red on the eligibility quiz if they're not eligible for a specific reason. And this does sometimes tend to win students to go back and change that answer just to trick the system. But we definitely want students to be honest and transparent about their situation, so we can make sure that we are doing a good job of considering students if they truly are eligible. The worst pain that I have ever had in working with our scholarship programs has been when we find a truly exceptional student who was nominated for All-USA only to find they were not eligible, and it was because they weren't enrolled at the time of application and still weren't enrolled when we selected scholars. So I would highly encourage students to be as honest and as transparent about their situation regarding enrollment that they humanly can here. So enrollment is required at the community college at the time of application. The students have to be enrolled in their community college for a minimum of 6 semester credit hours in an associate degree program through December 2020. And so by associate degree program, that certainly can mean a certificate program too. So associate or certificate degree program here. And Phi Theta Kappa membership is not required. Again, we talked about this earlier, but it is not required for students attending a community college in the U.S. So if membership is required of applicants attending a college outside of the U.S., just because we are looking to award those students that are from our international chapters, certainly outside of the U.S. as well. I see several hands being raised here and some chats coming through as well. So I'm checking that really quickly. Okay, so Laurie already addressed those with the nomination side of that question. So students have to be enrolled at least part-time at a 2 or 4-year college in the fall of 2020. So semester for Coca-Cola, and I apologize, that should be fall of 2021. So what we're looking for is just to make sure that when these students are receiving these scholarships, we're confirming that their plans are technically to still go to a college to support the usage of those funds. We do get questions about how are these funds dispersed. These scholarship funds are paid directly to students not to the college. So we know that the access barriers for education exist for these students well beyond the cost of tuition. So this is the reason we pay our scholarship funds directly to the student, because we want them to be able to decide, do I pay for tuition or do I need to put food on the table tonight? That really actually do help or hinder, of course, as you know, as student advocates and supporters, that their needs exist well beyond the cost of tuition. So we need them to be able to decide if they use that money to pay for tuition, textbooks, a computer, or food, housing, transportation, whatever they need that money to pay for at that time, that's what we want to support. So students who are not enrolled at least part-time are not eligible for these scholarships. So by part-time, we're meaning at least 6 semester credit hours here. So if they're enrolled in 3 credit hours, or maybe they're in some combination of a course that's 4 credit hours and they're only taking that, they would not be eligible. So we're just looking for students who are part-time or above to be considered for these scholarships. And these students cannot have been previously nominated for All-USA. You may have students who want to reapply for scholarships. Maybe they were applied and were nominated last year, but they're still at your community college, which is totally fine, but they cannot be re-nominated. And like Laurie was mentioning earlier, they can apply for these scholarships. And again, we have scholarships that don't require nomination. They can certainly apply for those. You'll see them on your dashboard, but just remember that you're going to be seeing on your dashboard students who are eligible for All-USA. So again, if it's not that question we talked about before, whether they're showing up or not for you, and they're showing up tied to the correct campus, the next question that I would ask is if they're eligible for All-USA as to why they may not be showing up on your dashboard. So the 2 questions you should ask if you know a student should be showing up, but maybe they're not, it's either directly associated with how they tie themselves to a college or campus, or if they have been previously nominated before or are not eligible for All-USA. So just keep those things in mind when you're looking on your Nominator dashboard, to which you should have received instructions from us already at this point about your nomination dashboard as well as your login information. If you have not received that, just go ahead and drop your contact information in the chat box, or you can message us directly. And I'll share our email address in just a minute so you can have that, but we'll get you all taken care of. But the student's college record must be free of suspension, probation, or other serious disciplinary action. This is a big one, and why we're putting this here is because we, of course, work with students who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated, and so it is totally fine if your students have been previously incarcerated, that you are nominating them for these scholarships. They should not be penalized against for not being considered if they have a past record. What we're looking for here is that if they have a criminal record or if they're a convicted felon, literally if their terms of sentencing and probation have been completed. If that answer is yes, that their terms of sentencing and probation have been completed, they can certainly mark that they're good on their application. So they're clear there. So if you do have questions or have students who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated and you have questions about that, certainly let us know. But we are looking to award students if they are exemplary students who are doing profound things. For example, like our previous past international president, James Elliott, as well. He had a criminal record, but his terms of sentencing and probation have been completed. So yes, absolutely, you can nominate students if their criminal record or their terms of sentencing and probation have been completed. Where it gets a little hairy is if the student has a criminal background and the terms have not been completed yet. So if that answer is no, that's where it gets harder, just because we do have some scholarship donor restrictions in place that would prohibit us from recognizing students that have not completed their terms of sentencing or probation. So I do see there are a couple of questions that have come through here in the chat as well. And so it looks like Laurie has addressed those as well regarding students who are not Phi Theta Kappa members as well. So the citizenship requirements are always going to be a big question that you'll get. We do have resources posted on our website about what citizenships are required for what scholarship programs, because as you know, different scholarship donors have different requirements. So this is why we ask these questions on the eligibility quiz, to make it as easy as possible for the students, as well as you, as the nominators, to make sure that they're being considered for scholarships in which they're eligible for. All-USA is open for any citizenship status, as well as our DACA students as well. So if you have a DACA student who does not, of course, have any type of documentation, we have a citizenship placeholder that can be requested, and we will upload that to our resource library as well, so students can download that to upload in their citizenship requirement upload section as well, because we don't want students to feel like they'll be punished or to be looked at differently if they are a DACA student. And no, we will not, of course, divulge their status to ICE. So that is always a question that comes up as well. So we want students to know that we support them in their educational pursuit, and certainly they will not be discriminated against because of their citizenship status, for sure. So, but just note that the citizenship status, we ask them to be honest on that question for the rationale of making sure that we're providing scholarship donors with the appropriate types of students they're looking to recognize. But also this question feeds into the All-State Academic Team program as well. So when a student says that they're a U.S. citizen, we're taking that to be true when we're working with All-USA or All-State program coordinators. We're sharing that information if they say that they are a U.S. citizen, if they are a permanent resident, or if they're a temporary resident. We do need to let those coordinators know that because there are some restrictions for the All-State Academic Team levels, and in specific for the All-Arizona Academic Team as well, just for us to be mindful of and in supporting the All-Arizona in specific academic team with their citizenship restrictions as well. So we're asking students to be very, very honest on their application and in the citizenship area as well. So I see a couple people raising their hand. If you do have questions, be sure you're asking your question in the QA box as well, or in the chat box as well, and we will certainly address your questions too. The cumulative GPA that you're looking for the students is a 3.5 GPA on a 4.0 scale for coursework completed in the last 5 years. So we're looking at fall 2015 to present, and so the GPA is 3.5 at the time of application, and then we look at that GPA again in January to make sure that the GPA is a 3.5 that has been maintained through the fall 2020 semester to remain eligible. If that GPA drops below a 3.5, and we're getting that information in January 2021, we at that time do have to remove the student from consideration because the GPA requirement fell. So we are seeking students that obtain an associate's degree between December 1, 2020 and August 31st, 2021. So we're not going to be too meticulous on is that associate degree conferred December 1st, because we know that many of you are having to push your graduation or degree when you're conferring those degrees earlier because of the pandemic as well. But we are looking for students who are graduating between the fall of this year and August 31st of 2021. Our students have to have a minimum of 36 semester credit hours earned by December the 31st and 48 credits by August the 31st. And why that's in place, we're typically looking for those students who are going to be enrolled or transferring to a four-year school by August 31st. So tips for nominations, just to get through this, I do want to make sure we're leaving time for questions as well. We're looking at, these are merit-based scholarships, so we're looking for students who have demonstrated academic persistence as well as of course, leadership and students who are change agents on your college campus. When you're looking at who you would or should nominate, make sure that you're giving preferential, of course, targeting students who are those who are change agents on your college campus. Those who are change agents fare far better in the competition than those students maybe who are just dabbling in leadership roles. So when you're looking at who you should nominate, I would really recommend that you are looking at your list of nominees or students or applications on your dashboards to see and read those applications. See which ones have strong essays, which ones are highly engaged on your college campus or in their communities before you nominate them. So a lot of people will say, well, I know this student. I'm going to nominate this student because I know them. I would highly encourage you to take a look at the applications before you nominate, because you may have some students that you may not have seen of or heard of as much as a student that you may know that actually does have very competitive and strong application. Many of you may have earlier internal deadlines that you place on your All-USA nomination process. If you do, make sure that you're communicating that to your students early so they know that your deadline is earlier than the national deadline that they may see promoted from Phi Theta Kappa. And a lot of people do earlier internal deadlines because you have review committees that are helping you to review applications and are checking these things that we're talking about here for outstanding academic rigor. GPAs, high GPAs, participation in honors programs. While it's not required, a lot of people do look for that, as well as if there are any additional awards or honors, recognition, things like that that would help to add to the strength or the merit of that application. Again, the highest weighted area on any scholarship application, I would venture to say, and most particularly with ours, is the essay. So students who have demonstrated leadership and initiative and service learning are those that you probably want to focus on. The ones that are problem solvers, change agents, those who are not just identifying a need on your college campus, those who are doing something about it. These are the kinds of students that we're looking to see that make it to the top of the top for the All-USA Academic Team program. I know that it's going to look a lot different for you this year because of the pandemic, and you may not have had opportunities to do things in person, even if it is from a social distancing perspective. So the volunteerism, the service is going to look different this year. It doesn't mean that it won't exist, because we know that students are pushing beyond things that I think any of us had expected, which is incredible. So know that I think students are going to surprise us in different ways that, especially about leadership and tenacity and grit and demonstrating those things in ways that I don't think we really are expecting. But if it helps you to know what type of student typically lands on the All-USA Academic Team, it is those change agents. For example, I'll give you an example of one of the best essays and the best applications that I've read. Is of course a student who has high academics and has been very engaged and involved on his college campus and in his community, but he took his passions and he put it in action. He sought a way to take a situation that he experienced and made it to where he was impacting other people. This student almost drowned at an event, and he looked out and he saw, oh, well, if that student can swim, so can I. So he jumped in a river, and when he did, his peers saved him from drowning. And so when he got back home from this event, he said, you know, if I struggled to swim, chances are somebody else is too. So he worked with his college administration to say, can I conduct a survey to prove my point? I think I'm not the only one who doesn't know how to swim. And from that advocacy perspective, he was able to work with the administration to conduct a survey, and once he did that, he found overwhelming results that students didn't know how to swim. A lot of them didn't know how to swim. So he worked with people in his community to work with lifeguards and swim instructors to really get some training. And so he hosted free events for students on his college campus to educate them on how to swim. And what that did was not just prove a point that students didn't know how to swim, but he also did something about it. And so he took a situation that was very personal to him and did something with it. From an academics perspective, he implemented research techniques in there to help identify that need. And not only did he identify that need, but he saved other students' lives in the future. And so this is what we're looking for. We're looking for students, and maybe the case for your students is not just like that. It doesn't have to be just like that. But we're looking for students who are taking the initiative to find a problem that exists, maybe on your campus or in your community, and they're doing something about it. So change agents here. And even better, if they're applying this to what they're doing in their professional field or career of study, choice of study, they're doing something about it. So I could talk for days and days about what it looks like to identify great students there, but you know excellence when you see it. But just do know that anything that's submitted could become public through the media if they're selected as a scholar. Obviously, we're not going to ICE and outing somebody's citizenship status. But what we mean by this is when they're talking about things in their application, we want to write a bio about them if they're selected to be a scholar. People will pick up on that from in the national media, and they'll spotlight these students to celebrate them. So just knowing some things could come out in public, but if it is something very sensitive, obviously we work with the student to make sure they're okay with that being talked about in the bio if that does come up. So and we talked about this, be on the lookout for all types of students, all types of scholars. We did talk about earlier internal deadlines, judging criteria for your criteria to look at for your nominees could include academic excellence, what they've done from a leadership and service perspective, as well as looking at community and campus impact to help you nominate the top of the top from your college campus, not just that student that you may know. So academic record, of course, is important. Are we looking for students who have high GPAs? Sure. But is it as important to have a higher GPA with courses that don't really apply to their major? Or are we looking for students who have breadth and depth of coursework that ties in with their academic major? Absolutely. I think it's more important to find a student who is focused on their career and taking courses and taking rigorous courses as well that apply to their major, not just students who are taking a lot of electives and doing well with their electives. So keep that in mind in context when you're looking at the academic rigor as well in their record. So select exceptional role models and those career change agents as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Laurie to talk really quickly about the Nominator portal and our advisor portals.
Okay, and I'll circle back real quick to the essay. We had a question in the Q&A box discussing the degree of consistency, collaboration, and focus between the nominator and the nominee when it comes to the endeavor essay and the letter of recommendation. So those things do need to kind of work interdependently of each other. Those students do need to be communicating with the recommender, sharing the contents of that application so that that recommender is speaking to what's in the application. A lot of times we see it come down to it's really, really tight in scoring, and the letter of recommendation can make or break a student's whether or not they move to the next round or are selected. So the letter of recommendation is really, really, really important. And a lot of times we'll find information in the letter that the student left out of the essay, or it really does shine a brighter light on what the student wrote. So it is really important that that recommender and that nominee work very closely together on that letter of recommendation. Even though, like Christin said, it's not required, it is strongly encouraged. Strongly encouraged. These students who are really, really serious about this competitive program are going to have letters of recommendation that back up everything they write in their application. And I did have a question about this very thing here, the Nominator portal. How do you look at these applications? How do you review these applications? So when you log into your Nominator dashboard, if you haven't already, go ahead and take the opportunity, make sure that you can. It may take a few minutes the first time, but you'll see, I call it the grid, and it'll populate down below all the verbiage. It'll be a list of your scholarship applicants, and if you're a nominator for one campus, it will be one campus worth. If you're nominating for multiple campuses, your list will be extraordinarily long in some cases. You do have the ability to filter by campus or filter by pathway. But over on the right-hand side of your grid, once those names are listed, you'll see some icons, and we call them very lovingly the little blue download button, the eyeball icon, your green check mark, or your Ghostbuster icon. Don't be afraid of the Ghostbuster icon. We'll cover that in just a minute. But these different icons allow you to, the first one, the little blue down arrow, allows you to download the student's application. That way, if you have a committee, you can make copies of the application, share that with your committee members. You can kind of marinate on it, do what you need to do. We do ask that you shred those applications when you're done with your review process, but that little blue link will allow you to download the PDF. The eyeball icon just lets you view it. It just pops it up on your screen in a PDF format. You can scroll through it and kind of take a look at it. You'll see Christin's got a green arrow here. Application status, when those applications are complete, there's a green check mark. Green is always good in application process. So when you see the little circles with the eye, those are incomplete applications. Those will turn green, and those green check marks are eligible for nomination. That is accomplished by simply checking the green check mark next to their name. Now when you do that and you nominate a student, that student's going to move to the bottom of your list, and over on the far left-hand side under the nominated column, you're going to see the green check mark. If you accidentally nominate someone, use the Ghostbuster icon over there, the little red circle with the slash through it, and that just removes the nomination. It doesn't remove the application. The first year this came up, I was terrified of that icon. I thought I was going to delete somebody from the system, but it's completely impossible to do. So you can play with it. You can practice nominating your students, but they will go to the bottom of your list. So if you're nominating for multiple campuses and your list is very lengthy, you can just scroll all the way down to see those green check marks on the left-hand side that will indicate nomination.
Yeah, and I do want to jump in really quickly here too, out of respect for your time. We know that we're at that threshold of this hour. There's a lot to discuss with this. Know that this is recorded, and we will share this with all of you as well. So if you do need to hop off, you're not going to hurt our feelings at all. We're going to share this with you as well. We do have a couple more slides to talk through. But again, if you need to drop off, you're not going to hurt our feelings. We'll send you the recording to this. And to Laurie's point as well, if you are looking at your dashboard too, you'll see all kinds of icons here. You're not going to remove an applicant. Just make sure that, you know, the ones that you are wanting to nominate, you are selecting that green check mark. If you are a nominator for multiple campuses, you'll see the students on here designated by campus as well. So you'll see in the college section what campus they attend, the college and the campus. You can also filter out at the top of the bar here where you'll see campus. You can filter if you want to see students only from one campus as well. So you may see that you want to filter out to read applications by campus. You can filter those out so you can see them in order by campus. You can also filter them out to see students by specific pathway as well, whether that's for workforce or for transfer. You can see them separately too.
Perfect. So as we've kind of referenced throughout the presentation, we do have a lot of nominator resources in the, we call it the resource library, the support library, the articles library. It's all the same thing. It's support.ptk.org. Students can navigate there through the application. They can get there from the scholarship link on the web, or they can just simply type in the search bar, support.ptk.org, no leading W's. And you'll see all of these articles, the templates, the forms, these links to these webinars will be posted there. We did a student webinar earlier today. All this will be there. You've got your applicant guide, nominator guide, a copy of the nominator instructions that are pretty comprehensive, all the eligibility criteria. Pretty much if we've had to answer the question multiple times in a week, it's in this resource library, because if 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people are asking the same question in a week, there's a lot of other people who have the same question. Your nominator portal can be found at scholarships.ptk.org. When you go to that link, you'll see dashboard, you'll see there's lots of little, I don't have a screenshot of that, I don't think, but you'll see Nominator. And if you click on, hover over Nominator, you'll click Dashboard, and all that information will be there. If you have trouble finding it, give us a call, shoot us an email. One of the team will be happy to walk you through finding it, walk you through how to navigate the different icons that we talked about, answer any questions that you have about it.
Thanks, Laurie. And for the nominators who are also state advisors as well, please know that you can see your applicants from both perspectives. You can see your nominees or students that you could potentially nominate from your Nominator dashboard. Know that you're just going to see students who are eligible for All-USA on your Nominator dashboard. If you're looking to see all students, regardless if they are nominee worthy or nominee eligible for All-USA, you will see both the students that you can nominate as well as students moving around with an active application, not just those that require a nomination. We did this intentionally because we did not want nominators to get confused with a student who wasn't eligible for All-USA. So know that you'll be able to see students for all programs from your advisor portal. So you'll be able to log in to the PTK website. You'll be able to click your advisor information there, advisor portal, and you'll see way more applicants than for an advisor than anyone who is eligible for just All-USA from the Nominator portal side. And we just talked about that Nominator portals will only show those students who are eligible for All-USA only. From your advisor portal, you can download applications to, say, for example, you're trying to have a proofing party, or if you are just trying to provide feedback for a student and mark that file up. You can download applications in PDF format, so you can mark them up in the PDF, or if you need to print those, you can certainly do that as well. So advisors have no capacity to nominate students for All-USA. So if you're worried that an advisor may be able to submit a nomination for All-USA, that is not true. So just know that the only people who have access to nominate students for All-USA are the intended nominators as well. So that is strictly done from the Nominator portal. Those are two different links, two different access points, and there are permissions based on the person's role. So only a nominator, someone who's nominated or designated as a nominator in our system, will be able to nominate. You can obtain applicant contacts directly from your portal. So if you need to see the email address to encourage a student to update their application, or if you need to communicate with them, you can grab their email address to communicate with them directly from your dashboard. And you can certainly look at the application if you want to see what the student's phone number is, if you need to call them instead. But you'll be able to see their email address directly from the application. We have addressed a lot of these questions here, but I definitely want to make sure we're giving you time to ask questions too, if they differ from what you see here. And a lot of the times we'll get questions about how workforce scholarships impact all state academic teams. Some states accommodate for workforce applicants on their all-state program, and some do not. We are working towards actively encouraging all of the all-state programs to make room for the workforce nominees as well on their all-state programs, but that will vary from state to state. If you do have questions, certainly you can let us know about that, and we can look at what your state does in specific and let you know that specifically. Just email us. I'll share our email address in just a minute, but it's scholarships, plural, scholarships@ptk.org. And we'll be glad to help you out with that. We had a question that came through just a minute ago, just about talking about the degree of symmetry that needs to exist from the students. And let me get back directly to this question because it was great. To discuss the degree of consistency, collaboration, and focus that the nominator and nominee need to demonstrate the significant endeavor on the nominations letter. So this is a really great question. What we're looking for, if you want to have a standout letter of recommendation to support your nominee, this can come from the nominator. The letter of recommendation can come from the nominator. It does not have to be the nominator. but it can come from the nominator. But if you want to have a very cohesive application and one that is a very strong nomination, the letter of recommendation will echo what the essay is talking about. And the reason I'm saying this is because the essay is the most heavily weighted item on the application. Therefore, what you're talking about on the essay should back up what is being discussed in the essay. More often than not, what's being talked about in the essay will have details that can be shared by the person who is providing the letter of recommendation. We're looking for the student to illustrate how many, how much, how often, but we also know that students struggle with being a me person and talking about what they specifically did. So sometimes the person who's writing the letter of recommendation can do a better job at explaining or adding additional insights that the student maybe omitted in the essay about the degree of leadership or how many, how much, how often, details that could supplement that essay. So know that when those two things marry together, so when they complement each other, the essay and the letter of recommendation, the stronger that application is. So really great question, Mark. Thank you for asking that as well. That's always a question that comes up. We have seen that the letter of recommendation can make the student push them over the edge in terms of, do we select them or not, when it comes to allocating additional points for that student's scholarship application. So we have seen that letter of recommendation provide additional points in the eyes of a judge to help that student actually get selected over another one. So know that those letters of recommendation are very important there as well. So I know that we've had a lot of other questions as well that have come through, and I hope you've seen those being addressed in the QA box as well. It looks like we have addressed all of the questions that you have submitted so far, but we are definitely still here and are here to support you with any questions that you may have. If you do need to get your login changed, contact us, or you can update your login information directly from the login page as well. But again, we're here to support you and also to support the students in this process. If there's anything we can do to help you with connecting with students and also with making sure that you feel good about your nominations in terms of strength of the application or diversity of your applicant pool, certainly let us know. We're here to support you and want to help. So without further ado, we are going to wrap up. But again, if you have questions or if we can help with anything, we're going to toggle to the next slide so you can see that. Oop, I went too far. There you go. So you can see our contact information as well. Screenshot this. Don't hesitate to reach out. Our phone number is here as well at 601-987-5741, or you can email us at scholarships, that's plural, at ptk.org. So feel free to reach out, and again, thank you so very much for all that you do to support Phi Theta Kappa and the All-USA Academic Team Program, but most especially these incredible and deserving students. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will share the slides as well as the recording very soon. Have a great day.